So before I launch into this, a couple of very quick things about me. I won't bother you with the bio, you already got that, but I grew up on the East Coast, which means I can at times talk blindingly fast. So if that should happen, send a note on Twitter maybe and just say, Ian, you're talking too fast. And then you can, hopefully I can slow down. I was a writer first. I've always been a writer. I actually got into marketing because I liked writing. The technical part kind of came along as I worked more and more on this stuff. So, as a writer, I feel a lot of the same pain, I think, that you all undoubtedly feel as well. The toughest kind of writing that I have to do, the most challenging kind of writing, at least for me, is the short pitch, right? Nothing takes more time than writing as little as possible. You spend about half that time refining your copy, and then you spend the other half convincing yourself and your client that no, a quarter-page ad shouldn't have 750 words in it. It takes a long time. It takes a lot of thinking. And the short pitch, back when I started, around 1993 or somewhere way back in the past like that, used to be all about print. It was all about putting as much information as possible into a well-designed, carefully designed ad without disrupting the ad, the visual, but still providing additional information when people were ready to have it. So this ad, and by the way, this was my total lust car until the Tesla S came along. Now the Tesla S is definitely my dream car. But you can take a look at this. This is the cover page for a brochure for the Ford Mustang. And it's still a short pitch, right? Because you've got to get people to open the brochure. And if you look at how tight the copywriting is on this ad at the bottom right, if you look at how much work went into making it totally efficient, that's a perfect example of a short pitch in the world of print. But now, online, the ultimate short pitch challenge is definitely landing pages. There are banner ads, it's true. Banner ads obviously are even shorter, but banners, in my experience, the visual is at least 75% of what makes a banner work. Because the most you can put on a banner ad, how many words can you really put there? And I know I'm about to get a storm of tweets about this, but that's just what I experience. So as a copywriting challenge, there's no question, in my mind at least, that landers are definitely the big challenge. They're what take the longest to deal with. They're what take the most work, and they are where the biggest stakes are, right? If you're writing for a landing page, the stakes are very, very high. So landing pages have to say a lot, right? They have to structure information so that I can get the short pitch at the top, then more information as I go down the page, and still have a really clear call to action and still have a structure that makes all that fit together in a sensible way, right? You can't just stack them. And by the way, it also has to compel me to stick around in that first 1 or 2 seconds after I land. If it doesn't, I'm gone. And while the visuals can affect this, it comes down to the writing. If you take a look at the lander on your screen, you can see how writing is structured and how the visual sort of supports the copy but doesn't drive it. A lot of landers are done this way, which means the copy, again, the short pitch is really critical. And that's what I'm going to talk about today is the big and little things you can do to help landing page performance through copywriting. And if you take a look on this page, you're going to see one of the things I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about, which is, again, selling the page at the very top. Selling the page, the fact that your page is the product. And almost everything I talk about today is going to revolve around that, the fact that the page is the product. So starting with the first rule here. People visit pages expecting a specific thing. When they come to your page, they're investing time. That's what they're investing in your product. That's what they're investing in the information you're providing. They are paying time in exchange for something you're going to provide. And if they don't get that return on a time invested, they're gone. And they probably won't be back. Right? We have an audience now with very little patience, a very short attention span. You have to provide immediate return on time invested and then immediate support for the prediction that you're going to provide more return on time invested. The moment I land on a page, that first 1 or 2 seconds, I have to know that my time is going to be well spent, right? So you have maybe 2 seconds, probably more like 1, to do that initial sale of the page. Then, as I read, you have to keep showing me, keep demonstrating more and more return on time invested for me, that I'm getting more and more really good information. That information may be about the product, it may be about the company, it may be something else, but you have to constantly show me that information. If you do that, then I'm going to go away smiling, right? Because I got my return on time invested. I'm going to convert, and I'm going to go away smiling because I feel like my first investment paid off. Therefore, I'm going to continue along the process and move to the next stage in the customer lifecycle. If people are investing that time, then as I just said, the page is the product, not your product or service. When people land on a landing page, the product is the page itself. If you get a conversion on that page, if that investment of time generates a conversion, then you get to sell and pitch your actual real product or service. So you got to sell it. Remember what I said about the first 1 to 2 seconds? That's when you sell the page. Now, some of that is about design, but a lot of it is about the copy. We've tested pages, using Unbounce, of course. We've tested pages where we have no visuals, just text. And we can see the same kinds of changes in user behavior by changing text on those no image pages, those no visual pages, as we can on a page with a visual. That's not always true, but we can see how much influence copy has. And if you take a look at your screen, you can see an example here of what I would consider a less than optimal headline. And yes, I'm exaggerating. This can be the headline. It can be the first statement after it. Whatever it is, if you're just doing this, if you're just jumping up and down and yelling, it's not that effective, right? Okay, your stuff rocks. Why do I care? Buy it. Well, that's what I'm here to think about. So why do you have to tell me that right now? This has very low return on time invested. This is a little bit better, right? Our widgets are better. Learn why. I still don't care, though. There's very little return on time invested here, but at least you're not jumping up and down and yelling and screaming at me. This provides a lot of return on time invested, right? Because if I'm a widget shopper or I'm in the widget industry, this actually tells me why I should care. And if your product is lighter and stronger, then you're telling me that your product will help me profit more and decrease maintenance life cycles. This is very high return on time invested. The moment I land on that page, I learn something, or I have an assumption reinforced. Whatever it is, this has a great return on time invested. Second rule, avoid plague words. And yes, I know it's a cliche, but I was a zombie geek long before zombies were passé, so I get to use them. Plague words are words that just kind of suck the life out of your copy. And you've probably heard some of them. A lot of them are words that just don't need to be there, like indeed. Yeah, indeed, indeed. I know that you mean this or you wouldn't have written it, so you probably don't have to say indeed. Added bonus. Well, if it's a bonus, it's added. And by the way, I make all these mistakes, so don't think I'm mocking someone or something. Almost every rule in this, I've broken almost every single rule in this slide deck, and I still do it on a daily basis. So if you want, right after this presentation, you can go look at everything I've written in the last year and then send me tweets and emails saying, haha, found this, and I'll just show you that I'm not just pointing the finger at other people. But added bonus, you don't need that. End result, no, it's just result. Totally unique, well, is it unique? Or what's the difference between unique and totally unique? It's the same thing. Now, there's a very long list of these plague words, and I believe there's a link to them from the blog post I wrote to go with this presentation, and I think we'll be providing a link afterwards as well. It's not so much about that list, although it helps to look at the list periodically. It's about thinking that way, getting into that mode of thinking, right? You're doing the short pitch. You can't afford to waste a single word. Every word has to do something. So if you have any two words that do the same thing, you want to get them out of there. Third rule, provide social proof. Now, a lot of people assume that social proof literally means social media. That is not what social proof means. Social proof is a much broader concept. And in fact, there's a great book written by a guy named Robert Cialdini that if you have not read it, you need to read it. It's called Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion. And he talks about social proof, and there's much more to it than a little button with numbers. This doesn't hurt, right? If you can show that something was tweeted 1,001 times, that's great. And in fact, we've even seen that having these tags up at the top of the page with a 0 in all of them generates more social sharing than just having the tags without the numbers at all. So some degree of proof or even evidence that you're looking for proof can help. But endorsements mean a lot too. And by an endorsement, it doesn't have to be, you know, I don't know, Joe Namath thinks this is the best pair of gloves ever. I probably just dated myself. Nobody knows what I'm talking about. It's just someone providing some reinforcement that whatever it is that you're reading about is worth it. It's providing evidence that someone else found a return on time invested, bought the product, used the product, and then took action to come back and say, this is a really great product. They're reinforcing that my time invested in this page is a worthwhile investment, right? Because they're saying, hey, you know what, I used it and it's worked really well. That's one of the reasons that social proof of any kind is so important. If you have a landing page that works around, you know, a principle of the number of customers you have served, then show the number of customers you have served. You know, if you remember, McDonald's used to do this, over 2 billion served. That's social proof. Now, what if nobody agrees? What if you can't get a single endorsement? Then, again, go to the numbers, right? Basecamp, I use Basecamp a lot because their marketing is, their landing page marketing is very, very clever. You know, they're just showing generic numbers probably because they couldn't find enough companies that would give written endorsements. Their product may be exceptional, and yours may be too. It may just be that the clients don't want people to know that they're working with it, or they can't get approval, or something else. You can say the number of subscribers, right? Just say we have 4,500 current subscribers you can subscribe to, and that's your call to action. Social proof. It's just showing that other people have taken the action you're about to take. And showing any kind of count, again, any kind of count, even if it's 0, definitely has a better effect. So if you're doing numbers, if you're doing a count of the raw number of times people have tweeted a page, that kind of social proof, yes, it can be pretty useful. If you're showing the number of subscribers, you'll be clever about it, right? If you get 1 or 2, you could put something like, yay, we're off and running, why don't you be number 3? That's still social proof. It's saying, hey, why don't you join the group? And you can be one of the first people to join the group. So there's lots of different kinds of social proof.
Ian, have you seen, have you tried any tests with certain kinds of social proof that have, had adverse effects on your conversion rates, like negative social proof, let's say by accident?
I haven't tried any. I've seen them, especially when companies say, you know, if you like our product, tweet this hashtag and say why you like it. And then, of course, you know, all the people who are kind of cynical and want to have fun out there on the web start tweeting out the hashtag with every negative experience they've ever had. That's uncontrolled social proof. It happens. Man,
especially if there's I can imagine just having a live feed of that on the page.
Yes, well,
that would be a disaster.
Exactly. Well, Microsoft did it. It happened to Microsoft. It's happened to a bunch of sites. Because when you think about it, it seems innocent enough. But if you're a big brand with lots of people looking, you know, of course you've got some haters out there, people who either don't like your product or don't like something you've done in the world or something like that. They're going to be all over you. So negative social proof, uncontrolled social proof is definitely an issue. Any form of social proof that could potentially overload and crash a server could be bad. So something like if you work on page speed, page acceleration, if you have a landing page that lets people test the speed of their page and you haven't built that right and your page slows down, that's not so good because you're now proving that your page is slower because of the number of people using it when your product helps people speed up their page. So that's another example of things that can go wrong. But the biggest thing is any form of uncontrolled social proof could get you into trouble.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned earlier with the social media widgets that having them you found that shares go up when you have them display even a 0 for like the tweet
Yeah.
count. Do you have an opinion so far as the way that 0 would affect your social proof? Does it show that no one cares about your product or brand, or no one's willing to talk about it? Or do you think the trade-off of having people actually tweet is worth that?
I think it's a trade-off because I think it shows that a lot of people look and want to be the first one or one of the first people in a community. So social proof is very powerful among people who want verification, and that's most people, and it makes sense. I mean, it's a good instinct. There are some people out there who want to be the first to verify, right? They're the ones who would post to big social voting sites and things like that. They're the ones who are probably going to click those buttons with a 0. Also, existing readers who have come to your site before, have looked at other landing pages, whatever, they may be inclined to give it that plus because they feel that you have given them something of benefit in the past. So it's that principle of reciprocity. That can be very, very powerful.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So, I mean, pretty loyal followers, and then I guess kind of early adopters as well, who want to be the first to get out there. Yeah.
Exactly.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yep. So the next rule is talk to me. Okay. You can write copy that says our clients see higher conversions, right? That's sort of like you're looking across the room at something else. You're not meeting my eye while you talk to me about something. And you can see that why that would be a problem, right? If you're not looking me in the eye, the promise of return on time invested becomes much more empty. There's just not that much there. On the other hand, if you say, you will see higher conversions, that's much more powerful, right? Now, the other part, by the way, of talking to me is you should use contractions in almost every case. And this is an interesting bit of trivia I actually heard listening to a TED Talk yesterday working out, which is why it's not in here. But people recognize that when you don't use contractions, you are lying. It's an interesting little fact, but so use contractions as much as possible because, again, you are verbally looking them in the eye. People like to do storytelling. John goes and does this. John loses money. Then he goes and does this, and John saves money. That's fine, but don't make that your initial pitch on the page, not even the follow-up to selling the page. That's something you want to do later or in a piece of video content or something else. You should just say, you will save money. That's what you want to say. And the same thing here, right? Outperforms by 10% with 98% confidence. Sorry, let me back up. I said 46, forgetting things. We have tested this, and it outperforms 10% of the time, by 10%, sorry, with 98% confidence. And in fact, it also is not talking to you. I should say, if you do this, it will outperform pages that don't talk to the user by 10% with 98% confidence. You want to write to a 10th grade reading level. And this is a really interesting one. And we've, again, done a lot of testing. I don't have hard data on this because it's so dispersed across different industries. And this isn't a hard rule. What it really means is you should write maybe 2 to 3 grades below the reading level of your audience. And it's not because people are dumb. It's because when people are reading, they are pressed for time. They are not inclined to invest much of their time when they start, right? Coming back to return on time invested. And it's harder for them to read online, particularly now when they're reading on tablets or phones. They may be looking at a television set at the same time. They may be standing in line to get on an airplane. Whatever it is, they're in circumstances where it's harder to process text in their mind. So you want to write for that lower reading level. I always aim for 10th grade. So if you look at something like this, 10 gigabytes of RAM plus the new IncrediFast processor running at 250 megahertz makes our phone the best benchmarked available. I don't know really what that means. Oh dear, my picture is gone. I don't know what happened there. It leaves you in this state where you just don't get it. It makes no sense. On the other hand, if you say something like this, a faster processor and 10 gigabytes of RAM put our phone's performance ahead of the pack. That's getting there. It's improving, right? And there's still some things I would change there. But if I use a site called readabilityscore.com, you can actually measure the reading grade level. And I usually use the Flesch-Kincaid level. So if you take a look under readability formula at the bottom right there, grade is 8.4. That's what you're looking for. It's not a perfect measure, all right? It's just sort of helpful. Now, that said, if you look at reading levels across the country, there's actually, and if you want to give up all hope in humanity, you can read this report which says that most people actually are reading below the 10th grade level. So you have to be careful about what you write for which industry. Think about your audience. And note that that's the average, right? If you're selling a scientific product, then obviously you can write at a higher level. If you're selling to lawyers, you probably want to write at a higher level. If you're selling a mass market product, again, think about the 8th and 9th grade level, not because your audience is ignorant, but because they are going to be in a hurry. If you're selling to consumers, then they are going to be in consumer type situations, which means almost any situation. Whereas if I'm a scientist and I'm reading about your product, if I'm a computer engineer and I'm reading about your product, it's much more likely that I'm going to be at a desk or having just done some kind of very methodical look at different products and services. I'm going to be taking more time. If you walk away with no other rule, this is the one you probably want to learn, the blank sheet of paper test. This is built around the principle that online things often get taken out of context. Remember I talked about when people land on a page, you got to sell the page with those first couple sentences. People are not looking at the larger context when they look at those sentences. Their eyes zoom right in, they look at it, and then they decide if they're going to read more of the page. That means that that first statement has to be self-contained. And what the blank sheet of paper test says is it needs to be fully descriptive, meaning when you write something on a blank sheet of paper, it could be your headline, your first statement, whatever, and you show it to a perfect stranger on the street, they should understand what it says. Now, if you have a very technical product, they may not understand the product, but they should understand what you are saying. So you might say, the Flibbertigibbet computer processes at 500 more gigaflops. The person on the street may not understand what that's saying in technical terms, but they certainly understand that you're talking about a computer that processes it at a certain speed. Failure to use the blank sheet of paper test can have tragic consequences, and I always have fun going out and finding some of those tragic consequences. This is a headline from quite a while ago, and I'm a really open-minded guy, but I don't think this is what the Supreme Court did. I think that that is probably what the Supreme Court did.
In regards to that point about being able to write your headline or your hero copy on a sheet of paper and have someone recognize it immediately, that's certainly something that people ask us about very often. Like, what's one thing that I can do to my landing page to completely change it or really improve my conversion rates? And people often think that it needs to be really big, really intense changes, totally changing the design, revamping the the format. But we see like really effective headline changes to be super effective in A/B tests.
Exactly. And everything I'm talking about here, I don't know if anyone's noticing, but these are all little things, right? There's not one home run spectacular thing, because generally landing pages are all about the little things. They're all about the little things. This is not the worst landing page I've ever seen. It's not great. I'm not thrilled with it, but it could work. The problem is I have no idea what this is about. Is this about, if I take free security quote, right, that where you're trying to sell this page, what kind of security? Are we talking insurance? Are we talking computer security? Are we talking property? I don't know. Now I think, as I read more, they're actually talking about a cellular backup system, which is not what I would have thought of first. What I would have thought of is security like burglar alarms and things like that. So once again, I don't get it. Probably could have done better by simply saying ADT Small Business Security Systems. Even that would have been better than what was on there. I would like to go even narrower and say something like, cellular ADT Small Business Cellular Security or something like that, so that you narrow things down. I often use this pretend company, Harrison's Helmets. Harrison is my son, and they're making a new bicycle helmet, and it's called the H1. And if you do a headline like this on the landing page, it says lighter, stronger, the H1. That's really cool and snappy, but I have no idea what it's about. It could be helium, right? It could be an atom. It could be anything. I don't know. This helps a lot. Lighter, stronger, the H1 cycling helmet, right? Now I actually know what it is that I'm going to see when I get to this page. Again, return on time invested. I now know this is a cycling helmet, and I'm going to be interested because it's lighter and stronger. Swing for the fences. Don't write conservative copy on a landing page. People always want to do this. They say, well, we could get in trouble. We could, people are going to think that we're making false claims, etc. I'm not talking about making false claims. I'm talking about using the power of metaphor, the power of really great writing, to take your prose and the way you talk about the product to a completely different level. This is a company called Linode, and full disclosure, they're a client of ours. But, I mean, that's awesome copy, and we didn't write it, just so you know. But, Zeus-like power, that's kind of cool. I mean, they're marketing to nerds. That's awesome. That's the kind of language that gets your attention. You're going to remember it. It's the kind of thing that makes a home run, or it doesn't. It's a little bit risky, but it's worth a shot. And you don't have to take my word for it. David Ogilvy, who was writing copy and advertising before the internet was a gleam in a scientist's eye, said it originally. Don't bunt, aim out of the ballpark. That's how you write fantastic ad copy. Any questions coming up so far?
Yeah, we've got a handful filtering in for sure. But, as a comment on this about, kind of aiming out of the ballpark, I'll say I help out with a fair bit of the writing here at Unbounce, and one of the challenges is exactly like you said, trying to please everyone. But a friend of mine gave me some advice a little while ago and said, you should really just write what you like, and then you'll write really genuine, and then people will probably respond to it a lot better. But I got to admit, when you're sending an email to 40,000 people, it's tough to do things like Zeus-like power.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because that's an email, right? And to me, that's a different circumstance. I understand you might be sending an email that gets people to a landing page, but you want to be very careful about how you choose the metaphors you use, right? You want to make sure that when you're talking about a particular product, like you're saying Zeus-like power, that it's something that's going to have broad appeal to your audience. So, yeah, swing for the fences, but don't do something that you think, half your audience just won't understand. You shouldn't write for everyone, but you should make sure your writing makes sense to everyone, I guess is the best way to put it.
Well, and that goes back to kind of the blank sheet of paper
Yes.
concept that you mentioned earlier. But of course, I mean, and this is critical for all marketers, you have to know who your customer is as well.
Yeah.
And you're writing for your customer. Zeus-like power, I mean, I can't say that all nerds know who Zeus is, but they've probably played one or two board games featuring Zeus.
Yes, exactly. And also, right underneath it, you see more copy. And that's not self-contained. That breaks the blank sheet of paper test. But it bends the rules a little bit so that if you have to, you can read just another word or two and start to understand what they're talking about. So not perfect, but again, a lot of it is about writing in a style that you like as well as about the things you like, and then leveraging and applying the rules as much as you can. Actually, that's an interesting point to give here. Don't just follow these rules to the letter. That's not the point. I'm not giving you copywriting law, and I know for all of you that's probably a given, but just keep it in mind. I'm not giving you a checklist.
Just guidelines.
Yes, guidelines. Yes, they're more guidelines, really. So the next one is repeat the offer. All right, I did a long lander a long time ago, and it's a very long lander, as you can see here. And at first, I had the offer at the bottom, and that was it, which obviously in retrospect was really not very smart. As soon as I put the offer on the page in those 4 or 5 locations, my conversion rate went up 50%. So I was getting maybe, and this is for a very high price service, so I was getting maybe 5 to 10 leads from this page per week, and I immediately went to 10 to 20, which, given this product, makes a big, big difference. The folks at Basecamp, again, at 37 Signals, they do that too, right? They put the offer in 2 places. And it's for the same reason. If you're structuring your information and people are scrolling down the page, which is something I'll talk about in a minute, then you want to make sure that they have a couple of opportunities to basically pay back that investment that you've made because you've proven that they're getting a return on time invested. Next rule, forget about the fold. Okay, I know people say design above the fold, and for folks who don't know, the fold means the point on a page, on a landing page in particular, after which people won't see without scrolling. So if you have a page where you have to scroll down, everything you see without scrolling down is above the fold. You can forget about the fold now. Okay, they invented this thing called a scroll wheel. You don't have to worry about the fold anymore. It's very easy for people to scroll up and down. So don't, and I know I'm being a little sarcastic, but like I said, I grew up on the East Coast. You don't have to worry about it anymore. All right, if you take a look at a page like this from Kissmetrics, look at what they did. All right, they moved the offer down the page. It is now well below the fold. It provided a 300% lift, in their conversion rate. Apply the brakes, and yes, that's the correct way I wanted to write it. People need negative space. All right, this famous illusion, where you see 2 faces or you see a kind of a goblet. Negative space is very important. Don't fill up every single bit of the page. By the way, this illusion is called Rubens vase, in case you're wondering. You don't have to fill everything up, and in fact, people want the white space. Their brain needs it. It gives them a place to rest. This is a landing page we did for our company, and you'll notice we very carefully put in different places for the eye to pause, and while attention diminishes as you go down the page, notice that it grows again at each bit of white space, right? So the first arrow shows you, the most important part of the page, the stuff that's really selling the page. The second one shows you where people are pausing again if they've read why portent, and then the third one is where people pause after what do I get. So yes, declining attention, but white space is having an influence there. It's pulling people down the page. Last rule is the bonus rule, and again, there is no checklist for this. Okay? You write for return on time invested. That is your purpose in doing this. You have to think about taking these rules and making your own to ensure that when people are reading your pages, when people land on your landing pages, they always know that they're going to get a return on their time, their investment of time. Again, when people come to a landing page, the product is not your product. The product is your page. And you have to make sure that people feel that when they invest their time, they're making a wise purchase. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thanks, Ian. Man, there was quite a lot of activity on Twitter. A lot of people particularly kind of grabbed onto your points about avoiding plague words, added, bonus, yeah. Indeed. And then also knowing who your customer is, which was a point that you and I were kind of chatting about earlier. While we're chatting here, for everyone attending, if you have any questions, please feed them into the chat widget there, and then we'll get to those. A handful of people asked what the book was that Ian mentioned earlier on, and the book was Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion, revised edition. So if you check out the Unbounce Twitter account, Tia, our social media manager, has put it up there for you, so there's a link to it if you want to check it out.
And by the way, if you read that book and you're completely paranoid, from then on, it's not my fault. But you learn things about the way communicators can change our minds about things, and by the time you're done, you're kind of thinking, "Wow, that's great."
Have you, Ian, you mentioned you're kind of maybe a bit of a nerd. Have you played the board game, The Settlers of Catan?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
because I find that as board games go, that game is so much more dependent on communication, and people who are good at this persuasion will win every time.
Yeah, because you can use all the different rules, particularly the rule of getting into a community first to get different players to cooperate with you at the right time. And I know that sounds absolutely horrible, but it's fun when you're doing it, okay? It's a fun game.
Hey man, it's a fun Friday night when you're not spending your time thinking about the copy on your landing page.
That's right. That's right.
No, I mean there are a handful of questions. Well, actually, quite a few. There was one I was just looking at. Do you have any like rough guidelines for, how much text there should be on a landing page, or does it vary for e-commerce versus service versus, like a newsletter sign up?
It varies a lot. What I'll tell you is in my experience, the more B2C, the more consumer-based it is, the broader your audience, the less copy on the page you want to have, just in my experience. So the more technical, the more it's focused on a particular service or a particular product that people in a specific industry or whatever will want, the more you can just write as much as you want. I mean, you saw those long landers and the Basecamp lander, which is also pretty long. The Basecamp lander focuses on agency owners and people who manage projects. My lander focused on senior marketing people who want to hire a consultant to do a really deep dive into their consulting. Whereas, if you look at a lander for a Nike running shoe, you're going to see a lot less text on the page. So that's generally the rule that we're going to follow.
I mean, do you think that has anything to do with, let's say, the investment required? Because I mean, buying a running shoe is, a fairly low investment, whereas choosing your project management software or presumably signing up for your course would be a lot more.
I think it's something about the financial investment. There's also the reputation investment. If I buy a lousy pair of running shoes, the worst that happens is I either bring them back or I buy another pair. If I hire the wrong marketing consultant and they do a bad job, then my boss or bosses are going to be really ticked off, or I'm going to hurt my own company pretty badly. So whatever it is, the stakes are higher, even if the investment isn't.
Okay, yeah, I mean that makes sense. Sort of being accountable for yourself versus being accountable for other people and having to kind of prove that value and really prove it to yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
Of everything you said, I think the most controversial was your comment about forgetting the fold. There are a lot of people who said, "Are you sure about that?" Because we've seen that people don't scroll much.
Mm-hmm.
What kinds of tests have you run?
Well, we've done a lot of testing and let me go back to this page. We've done a lot of testing of long versus short page, and what we find is you still have to have fantastic copy at the top. You've got to sell the page at the top. You've got to provide your offer at the top. But the more technical the product, the higher the stakes, the more people want to see more information. So it's not so much that you can have the most important part of your page below the fold. You can extend your page below the fold. You can say more. So instead of ending up in a situation where you're removing really good, useful information from a page because you want it all to stay above the fold, you can structure it so that the top of the page provides you that really basic information, and as you scroll down, you get narrower and narrower into more and more details of how this particular product or service works. If you look at this lander that's up on the screen now, you can see, the first chunk of text is very much, it's very basic. The next one starts to get more detailed. Then you've got those 3 icons which go into specific reasons, specific things about this besides the price and the structure that you might want. And then we get really, really detailed. And then we have another call to action. So it's just a drill down. It's not so much that I'm saying, don't worry about it. Put your most important call to action at the bottom of the page and make them scroll. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that a lot of people who wouldn't have otherwise converted may convert because there's more information below the fold.
One thing that I know we've seen before is sometimes if there's no indication that there's anything below the fold, that can be more of a hindrance than let's say there not being anything at all.
Yes.
So one, yeah, providing an indication that there is more to access. And with this example that you have, I mean, I noticed that there's that small orange button beneath kind of that primary bit of copy at the top. And I've seen landing pages where people will add, like a read more smooth scroll link that then scrolls down the page. And the smooth scroll in particular seems to indicate that, yeah, there's more going on. And I've seen conversion rates increase using that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we haven't had time to test that on this page yet. If you click sign up now, it scrolls down to the bottom where the form is. So, if you're ready to convert there, you're definitely going to scroll down. Otherwise, you can see the white area just below sign up now at the top. That's where the fold is most often. But if you keep going down, you'll see that you've got the design for small business. That's showing up above the fold on some screens. And then as you keep moving down, you can see where the most common scroll point is. So we're seeing people scroll down the page even without a clear indication. Whether it would work better, instinctively I say yes, this would work even better if there was an indication that they could scroll down.
But even as you said, I mean, if you click that sign up now button, it will scroll them to the bottom, and presumably, the rest of the content will scroll by, so they'll see that they can access more of it.
Yeah. Plus, what we've noticed in visual testing, where we're watching people, is if they have a mouse wheel, or if they're on a laptop with a touch pad, they're very likely to just there's a sort of nervous twitch that they do when they get there. They immediately do a little bit of a scroll up and down.
Yeah.
And that seems to be very effective too.
There's a comment here from Jonathan. It just kind of reinforces the question we were just discussing about the fold, where he says, have you seen people mistake the offer as the bottom of the page? Because he thinks that they're seeing that on their pages, where the offer may be either at the top or in the middle, and then once people get to it, they kind of quit scrolling past that point.
I haven't seen people mistake it. I've seen them just stop at that point, but I'm not sure it's a mistake. I think they just stop because they've seen enough. Now, if they're not converting at that point, and sorry, I probably need a little more information, but if they're not converting at that point, that may be happening because there's not a clear way to convert once they see the offer, and that I just don't know. Mm-hmm. And I've seen that a lot. I rarely see people stop as they scroll down because they don't think there's anything else below it. But again, my instinct tells me yes, they're more likely to stop if they don't see anything below it.
But it might not be a mistake. They might,
yeah.
Possibly.
And that was the most wishy-washy answer I ever could have given.
Well,
maybe a record.
Not really. I mean, if you're measuring, let's say you're measuring your conversion rates and you have a heat map and you're measuring activity on the page. Okay, you're looking at your heat map and you see that people stop at your offer. But if your conversion rates are higher, then it doesn't matter because your goal isn't to get everyone to read the page. Your goal is to get people to convert. So measure what you want.
That's right.
And act on that.
Yeah.
So no.
Well, and again, yeah. Okay. Thanks. Good save. You said don't write for everybody. Don't design for everybody either. If you're seeing a fantastic conversion rate above the fold, you don't have to make it a mission to have stuff below the fold. Just put it in your quiver. It's another option.
And this is a wishy-washy answer, but it's true, and it's test it. Run a test, see what works better, because sometimes different audiences, different products, different channels, can all perform differently.
Yeah, that's right.
Charlotte has a question about the Kissmetrics case study that you had up there. Mm-hmm. And the fact that Kissmetrics moved the demo form from the top down to the bottom and saw that 304% lift. Do you have any idea why that would have been the case?
In this case, and again, full disclosure, I got information from people there. They're not a client. They're not a service we use. But in this case, their theory is that people had to read further down the page to get the information they wanted. And only by putting the offer further down the page could they sort of force people to get that information. If you look partway through that page, it's in another language, but if you see where it says introductory offer 40% off, it's sort of right above the little bag of groceries on the right-hand one, that if you click 40% off, you then zoom down the page and are able to fill out that form. So the theory is that people had to see more of the information to make their decision. And by forcing the decision on them too early, you are making them you're driving them away. It's kind of like
it's a little
walking into
bit
a car.
off-putting.
Yeah, the hard sell, right? The hard sell is always a little off-putting. You don't want someone standing in front of you saying buy, buy, buy the entire time that you're looking at a product. The classic used car salesman stereotype, right? That's pretty much what it is.
Now, I'm trying to figure out with these questions we've got the best way to go from one to another. Hey, you know what? Actually, I have a question for you. And it is from a customer here. It's Kim has a question about video. So we've done webinars in the past with Wistia, and I mean I'm a pretty big fan of video, but I also have pretty strong ties to writing and copywriting. I'd kind of like to get a copywriter versus like a video producer to kind of duke it out on which is more effective on a landing page. But have you ever tested that? Like,
I have. I'm biased. So there's this thing in testing, I'm sure you know it, called the Texas sharpshooter fallacy, and I think I'm probably the ultimate Texas sharpshooter, meaning I'll interpret the data the way I want. What I've seen is that video on a page that autoplays can chase people away. I know other people have seen data completely to the contrary, and it may have to do with audio, and whether you're sitting in your office and all of a sudden audio is blasting out of your speakers. It may have to do with something completely different. But in my experience, having a video on a page, particularly if the starting frame is a good hero shot anyway, can actually be pretty useful. What you don't want to do in most cases is take away other things that sell the page in favor of the video, unless you really know something specific, because video does not instantly sell the page. If you're Wistia, of course it does, right? Because you're a video.
Well, their videos are amazing.
Yeah, and their videos are amazing. I was just actually at MozCon, and there was a couple of videos there that were so good and so entertaining. But I'm not just butt kissing there. I just really like their stuff.
No, they are legitimately really good. We were at MozCon as well. They were.
Oh, well, there you go. So Oh, that's right, you were. I just never got to see you. So there the content is selling the page. But if you sell, I don't know, if you sell cars or bicycles or you sell a marketing service, you want to think really carefully and at least test it very carefully, because again, you got to sell that page pretty quickly. And if you think your audience has already been deluged with people or commercials showing the car driving or people showing them the bicycle or whatever else, they're probably there for a different kind of information.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they know that the car drives.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, the core rule is, in my experience, video does not instantly sell the page. You can't assume that. You can assume it if if your business is about video, but otherwise, video and motion graphics don't immediately sell the page in that first 1 to 2 seconds. So the other thing we'll do is, if we do a long form page, we'll put the video further down.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I think going to your point about having the video autoplay, I mean, that's kind of like going in for the hard sell again right off the bat, which is really off-putting.
Yeah.
I know, especially if you have mobile traffic and, people are scanning through and your video autoplays. I know I get really weird about any audio from my phone.
Yeah.
I think audio in general is just something that people are very particular about, which actually, you know what, I want to apologize to everyone that was here at the beginning, because there was a chime going off every time someone joined the webinar. I had no idea that everyone could hear that. I am so sorry. So I just want to throw that out there. So thank you for sticking through that, everybody. You know what? A comment that I kind of wanted to bring up earlier, when you were talking about your page being your product and really selling your page, it reminded me of an analogy that I saw a little while ago that I've now brought up like a million times, which is, if when you're selling something, your customers are, Mario, like from Super Mario.
Mm-hmm.
So your customers are the little Mario, and the thing that you're trying to sell is your fire flower. And then, of course, that turns him into Super Mario, who can shoot fireballs. And we have a tendency to really try and sell the flower. We'll talk about what color it is, how tall it is, how wide it is. But really, people want to become Super Mario, and that's what you should focus on, and that's what you should sell. And there was an example you had at the beginning that I thought was really good that really highlighted that.
Talking about why you would care. Why do I care about this product? And that's, the why is particularly important. And in fact, someone I know who knows a lot about marketing and sales always says, so what? You know what? I'm not going to go all the way back there because I'm going to give everybody a headache. Um, so what? You know, why do I care? So you're talking about Super Mario. I would even go further. I would say, you know, why do you care about becoming Super Mario? What's the reason that I want this? So when I talked about, you know, you'll save money, or a lighter, stronger fastener will save you money and improve performance over time. I'm not even there yet. I'm not even saying, you know, we will help you become Super Mario. I'm actually saying the benefits of being Super Mario. Um, and it may even be that, you know, that there's a middle ground that you should say, you know, once you become Super Mario, you will have things like the Super Flower, which let you get more points, and et cetera, et cetera. It's a game I never played much, so I can't speak to it.
Yeah, I mean, I hope I'm not using an analogy here that nobody understands, but I think, you know, I've heard that Mario is the second most recognizable brand
Yeah,
after Coca-Cola, so, well, I don't know if that's true.
yeah. Blank sheet of paper test. So
Yeah, blank sheet of paper, and then, of course, asking why, you know, over and
yeah,
over, just as you did.
yeah.
Um, all right. Do you think that, you know, Nate is wondering, in regards to the blank sheet of paper test, um, that idea of it being able to be like instantly recognizable to anyone out of context, does that still apply to a teaser landing page?
Yes. And again, it's not so much that it doesn't have to be fully descriptive of the ultimate goal. So if you're doing a teaser landing page saying it's coming, um, you know, I could see it and it might be worth doing, but I would sure rather see something that says, you know, I don't know, better head protection is coming, or um, you know, a faster tire is coming, or um, you know, whatever. There was a movie that came out years and years ago called Darkman, and it was terrible, by the way. It was an awful movie, but they put these posters all over the place that said, "Who is Darkman?" Um, and as far as I know, that was a complete failure as a marketing campaign because nobody understood what the heck it was talking about. Um, yeah, it's an example of where they went a little too far with the teaser.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's funny. I've seen campaigns like that that have also worked really well, but generally they have some kind of social component to it where people care and start talking about
That's
it and, you know, ask questions.
Yeah, or it passes the blank sheet of paper test with a very narrow audience simply because they know what it's about. Um, when Game of Thrones was first being marketed by HBO, all they showed was a guy riding a horse across a plain, and then it just said "Winter is coming," and that was the end of the commercial. Um, you know, obviously, with people who are avowed Game of Thrones readers, right, they're jumping up and down on their couch and screaming in high-pitched voices because they suddenly realize this can be turned into a show. Um, for other people, maybe it's totally meaningless, or it's just something really interesting. Again, you know, these aren't hard and fast rules. You can definitely bend them. Just remember,
Guidelines.
yeah, it's exactly. Whoever the audience is, though, you know, you want to focus on that audience. You want to do your best to pass that test with your core audience. HBO was clearly focusing on people who have read the books, because they knew that those people would go out and tell their friends, you know, oh my God, these are the best books ever. You've got to come watch this show if you don't read the books, but you should read the books first, and blah, blah, blah. You know, they knew that that was what was going to happen.
Hmm. And of course, I mean, they have the sales numbers for the books behind them, and nerds in general are really loyal and really devout and
Yes,
will, you know,
yes,
proselytize
yeah,
their, you know, their favorite media.
exactly.
Now, last question. A lot of people are asking about mobile. Do you have any specific recommendations for supporting copy on mobile sites? You know, should people add more or less, bullets versus sentences?
Um, well, you definitely want bullets. That rule seems to hold true no matter what. Actually, let me back up a bit. It depends on what kind of responsive design you're doing. If your text resizes to the point where the page is readable, but you know bullets still look okay because the bullet isn't taking up a third of my screen, then bullets. But if not, you probably want to go with sentences. Like if you're going to keep the font at 2/3 the size of the desktop or tablet view, um, then you definitely want to think carefully about delivering different content to the mobile readers. And I don't know if everyone knows what responsive design is, but it's basically a method of designing pages so that as the browser window gets larger and smaller, the page reformats on the fly to better suit that form factor.
Right, so that way you just have your one page, and then people come and they can access either the mobile version or the desktop. Doesn't matter. They just get the right one. They never have to think
Yeah,
about it.
that's right.
All right. Well, Ian, thank you so much. Again, like there was a ton of activity on Twitter, and so for any questions that we couldn't answer, as Ian said, he'll be able to hang out for a little bit on Twitter and answer some more of
Yes.
those. So feel free to get in touch with him there. You can see his Twitter handle at the footer of the slides. Now, I'm going to stick around. I'm going to go through Unbounce, and I'm going to show people how you can build your landing pages in Unbounce and run some tests that will let you quickly, kind of hone in on copy, that would better convert on your pages and how you can evaluate your copy. But Ian, I'm not going to ask you to stick around because I already appreciate that you have spent an hour of your day with us. Thank you so much.
Yep. Well, and also we already use your product, so.
Hey, perfect. Yeah, that's an even better reason. I don't need to see it because I know all about it.
That's right. Well, thank you very much for having me. I really enjoy doing this. So.